I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know why it was called Watson?
I don't.
You don't, because so many people assumed that it was, Sherlock Holmes and Watson, right? The two characters, and Watson was kind of helping. So that was the help to Sherlock Holmes. It's actually not that at all. Watson was the co-founder of IBM, Thomas Watson, and that's the origin of the name. So I didn't know that either until I joined IBM and Watson Health. So my division were called Watson Health because we were dedicated to healthcare and life sciences. I think the surprise to me, and I do remember that day when I used ChatGPT for the first time in I think October 2022. I think the surprise to me is that the change happened at the consumer level first. And we were all expecting AI to be implemented by large organizations, governments, and to be more efficient, to be more to save on activities, to reduce the workforce, to do all of this, right? To engage with clients, right? To do chatbots, all of that. We were expecting the adoption to be by enterprise. And what was very unexpected to me, at least, is that it has been a consumer-led change so far, right? So that was a little bit of a surprise. And of course, the first experience is always unique, right? When you interact for the first time, I'm sure everybody can relate. It is very unique to be able to ask questions back and forth and get really relevant answers. Much better than the search engine, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Might be difficult to handicap. I'm sure no one has a crystal ball, but when you look out at sort of the AI ecosystem as it exists today, you just sort of mentioned, Watson had really bet, its sort of strategy around enterprise adoption of AI. The hyperscalers, or sorry, not even the hyperscalers, but the LLM model providers of today have obviously gone more consumer first, but I would anticipate going enterprise as well. Like we use, ChatGPT as an example, internally for a lot of things at Validation Cloud. Yeah. How do you see that market developing? Do you think that the LLM providers have, an insurmountable lead? Do you think that, enterprise AI like Watson could catch up or even win, frankly, in enterprise AI? How do you see that?
Three ways. The first one is I don't think the LLMs are going to be the one leading the market one way or another, because most of that is either open source or almost free, right? Today, I think the leaders are going to be the one who can build enough power capacity and data centers to serve the demand. So that's where I think the big capital expenditure is today, and that's where the future leaders are going to be, because it's going to be really hard to enter the market, because to enter the market, you need power and data centers, right? So that's going to be really hard to enter the market. So the leadership is going to come from that angle, not as much from who has the best LLMs, I think, right? That's one. And I think two, what's interesting, because we said it started with consumers and it's moving to enterprise. That's not the first time that happened, right? You can think of the iPhone, right? But the speed of which it happened is incredible. Today, I think probably half of the code that we create at Hedera and Hashgraph is supported by an AI, right? And it was 0 2 years or 3 years ago. So the speed of adoption, the speed of impact to enterprise activities is just unheard of. I haven't seen that before. I don't think anyone has seen that before.
It's interesting that you mentioned sort of the consumer to enterprise sort of development arc. And I would argue that typically with most technologies in history, it's sort of been inverted a little bit, right? Because corporations in most instances, you think about the computer, right? The first, organizations that were leveraging computers were enterprises because they were the only ones that could afford to be able to pay for the hardware to even house them. And they, computers were the size of an entire room. And then you had sort of over time, things got less expensive and also could be miniaturized in a way that you could put in a consumer's hand, as an example. Now we have an iPhone, right? The one thing that's an interesting similarity between what you just described on the AI front and blockchain and crypto is that crypto also had sort of this consumer to enterprise sort of arc. I mean, if you just think about, Bitcoin, Bitcoin wasn't an enterprise sort of first asset, and similarly, like blockchain more abstractly, same sort of thing. Do you see any other sort of intersectionality or commonalities between blockchain and AI that you can kind of draw? Because I just think it's a really fascinating sort of comparison to make in some instances.